Welcome to your channel Skytech-Lens. On July 16, 2025, President Trump announced sweeping tariffs on over 150 nations, including long-standing allies, in a bid to protect the American trade balance. The move was less a targeted adjustment and more the construction of an economic wall, isolating the U.S. from the global system it helped build. Gulf allies like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, stunned to be lumped with small countries, saw this as both an economic and diplomatic insult. In financial centers from Riyadh to Beirut, confusion reigned. Was this a negotiating tactic or a permanent rupture? The global response was swift. Europe threatened steep retaliatory tariffs and supply chains began to seize up as companies rushed to beat the deadline. The intended show of strength instead unleashed global economic chaos, leaving America's reliability as a partner in question. The Middle East's leverage over the U.S. rests on four pillars: Saudi oil, Qatari gas, the Suez Canal, and the flow of capital. Saudi oil is irreplaceable for U.S. refineries, forming the backbone of America's petrochemical industry. Qatar, a global LNG powerhouse, can shift prices and supply routes, impacting American and global energy markets. Egypt's Suez Canal is a vital artery for global trade. Any disruption or fee hike instantly raises shipping costs worldwide. Lebanon, though small, is deeply tied to the US dollar system. Its collapse could trigger regional instability. These pillars give Gulf nations real power to retaliate, not just with tariffs, but by weaponizing the very systems that keep global trade and finance running. Even small nations, when plugged into the dollar-based order, hold leverage that can't be ignored. The US, by targeting these countries, risks triggering a backlash that could destabilize the global economy. Saudi Arabia's most effective response is simple: redirect oil exports from the US to Asia. China and India would eagerly absorb the supply, creating a shortage for US refineries and driving up prices. Analysts predict Brent crude could jump $5.06 per barrel, translating to higher gas prices for Americans within weeks. The policy meant to protect U.S. industry would instead hit American consumers and complicate efforts to control inflation. This pivot would also deepen Saudi ties with Beijing and New Delhi, signaling a strategic shift away from Washington. The U.S. would lose influence in the Middle East, not through war, but by pushing allies to seek new partners. The oil weapon is now about redirection, not just supply cuts. Qatar, both a U.S. ally and LNG competitor, can retaliate by reshaping global gas markets. By signing long-term contracts with Asian buyers priced in non-dollar currencies, Qatar could sideline U.S. pricing benchmarks. This would create a parallel LNG market in Asia, reducing U.S. influence and raising prices in Europe. American LNG exporters would struggle to compete and U.S. consumers would face higher energy bills as global prices rise. The tariffs, meant to protect U.S. industry, would backfire, making American energy less competitive and more expensive. Qatar's strategy is subtle but powerful: rewrite the rules, and the market follows. In this new gas game, contracts, not conflict, redraw the map. Egypt's Suez Canal is its trump card. In response to U.S. tariffs, Egypt could hike canal tolls on U.S.-bound cargo, raising shipping costs for American importers. Retail giants like Walmart and Amazon would pass these costs to consumers, fueling inflation. Shipping companies might reroute around Africa, adding time and expense, disrupting supply chains and causing shortages. Egypt's move could inspire other nations to weaponize their own choke points, threatening the principle of free navigation. The U.S., in trying to punish Egypt, risks a world where trade routes are tools of economic warfare. The result, a more expensive, unpredictable, and dangerous global trading system. The fallout from Middle Eastern retaliation lands squarely on American consumers. Saudi oil redirection means higher gas prices. Egypt's canal tolls raise the cost of imported goods. Everyday items, from electronics to clothing, become more expensive, squeezing household budgets and fueling inflation. U.S. industries face higher energy and raw material costs, threatening jobs and competitiveness. The Federal Reserve may be forced to raise interest rates, slowing growth and making borrowing costlier. Companies like General Motors and Raytheon already report losses tied to tariff-related costs. The America First policy, meant to protect, instead boomerangs, slowing growth and making Americans poorer. In a globalized world, building economic walls traps you inside with the consequences. The U.S. dollar's dominance is the bedrock of American power, but tariffs and backlash now threaten its reign. Gulf states are negotiating to sell oil in yuan, not dollars, a seismic shift that would carve out a huge chunk of global trade from the dollar's orbit. Qatar considers pricing LNG in euros or renminbi, and Egypt eyes China's CIPS for canal payments. As nations bypass the dollar, demand for it falls, weakening its value and raising import costs for Americans. Less demand for U.S. Treasury bonds means higher interest rates and more expensive government debt. These moves, once unthinkable, are now strategic imperatives for America's partners and rivals. The tariffs meant to assert U.S. power have instead incentivized the world to build alternatives. The dollar's long reign is being chipped away, not by force but by a global search for independence. The world is learning to imagine and build a future without the dollar at its center. The U.S. Gulf arms relationship has long underpinned American influence in the Middle East. Tariffs have shaken this trust, prompting Gulf states to consider alternatives to U.S. military hardware. South Korea and Israel stand ready to fill the gap, threatening billions in U.S. defense exports. Companies like Raytheon are already cutting profit forecasts as uncertainty grows. This isn't just about lost sales, it's about eroding decades of military partnership and interoperability. As Gulf militaries diversify suppliers, U.S. strategic influence wanes. The tariffs, meant to protect American jobs, may cost the U.S. its most valuable asset, its global alliances. A crack in the defense industry could become a chasm in American power. Are these tariffs a passing storm or a permanent shift? The global economy is built on trust and established relationships. Once broken, they're hard to restore. New trade corridors and payment systems, forged in response to U.S. tariffs, are investments that won't be abandoned. The world is learning to trade and finance outside the dollar, forming habits that may outlast any policy reversal. History shows trade wars leave deep scars. Protectionism breeds new blocs and fractures global cooperation. The U.S. risks sacrificing its long-term strategic assets, dollar dominance, alliances, and reliability, for short-term gains. The most visible cost is higher prices, but the deeper loss is America's central role in the global order. The world is hedging against the U.S., and the legacy of this trade war may be a more fragmented, less prosperous future for all. Thanks for watching the videos. Subscribe to channel Skytech-Lens for more updates.